World War I is known as a time period in which new weaponry was developed to advance on the opposing enemy. From the use of machine guns to poison gases, the new weapons would change the outcome of many battles. The machine gun was first developed by the British. Due to its inexpensiveness, though, the wealthy countries were not the only ones who could possess such a lethal weapon. This gun had a greater range than a rifle and was used as a defensive weapon because of its weight and lack of mobility. The British machine gun, named the Vickers, weighed 73 pounds and could fire 500 rounds per minute with an accuracy of about 600 yards. Later, they utilized the Lewis machine gun, which fired about the same rounds per minute but weighed two-thirds less than the Vickers. The Russian machine gun held the same effects but weighed anywhere from 20 to 80 pounds more than the Vickers. Germany did a good job of improving the machine gun as they continually made it lighter. A regular United States machine gun squad consisted of 8 men. A corporal commanding, a gunner, a loader, and 5 ammunition bearers. However, a limiting factor to these guns was the availability of ammunition. Overall, this gun proved its worth and helped every country at some time or another grasp the lead on their enemy. Another invention of Britain was the tank in 1916. Due to its size, its psychological effect was most of the time greater than its actual physical damage because it inspired terror among the enemy. It only traveled from 1 to 4 miles per hour, but was able to easily advance across enemy trenches. However, they would frequently get bogged down in mud, and since their armor was thin, once a bullet was shot into it, the metal from the bullet exploded inside and caused danger to the men within the tank. The exhaust was also harmful to these men, and they often got sick from the constant flipping movements of the vehicle. But in 1917, the tanks were proved useful as 300 of them went into enemy grounds and made an advancement that would have taken 3 days with artillery forces. Although tanks were not easy to manufacture, they definitely were worth it by the impact they made. Britain was not the only one to develop new weapons, though. German Army General Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin invented the first strategic bombers, which were named after him as zeppelins. These lighter-than-air crafts at first only reached a maximum speed of 16 miles per hour and were rather difficult to maneuver. However, they eventually were able to reach a speed of 56 miles per hour. Most of the zeppelins during the war were 500 to 600 feet in length, weighed up to 12 tons, and could rise up to 14,000 feet in the air. Bags containing 400,000 cubic feet of hydrogen kept these cylindrically shaped aircraft aloft. Gondolas attached held the crew and equipment. Germany started the war with 20 zeppelins. Air raids were performed by zeppelins as they dropped bombs over cities, injuring and killing many people. These air raids caused Britain an estimated €1.5 million in damage. Britain counteracted these raids, though, as they strengthened their defenses by blacking out the city at night and using anti-aircraft machine guns which easily shot down zeppelins. Along with British defenses, zeppelins were greatly damaged by weather, such as lightning, which, when struck, would explode. Air raids decreased as the war progressed, and its overall effect on the war was minor. France began the war using tear gas that was next to harmless to the soldiers. Germany invested this matter further and began to take control over chemical warfare. Considered unethical, chemical warfare became somewhat fatal with the creation of poison gases. Chlorine gas and phosgene gas were produced by Germany and made a shocking impact at first. These gases caused devastating effects, from choking and internal and external blistering to temporary blindness. Although they were not fatal, they restrained a large quantity of men from fighting in a battle. On the other hand, the use of the gas would sometimes backfire on the handler, as a slight change in the wind would cause the gas to change direction. Consequently, the number of casualties might be more from the side making the attack than the side actually being attacked. Chemical artillery shells filled with these gases were also developed, and by the end of the war were very popular. However, after the first attack of the gases, the victims easily produced the same gas, as well as gas masks for protection. But in 1917, the Germans introduced a vicious gas that not only burned the lungs but also the skin. This gas was called mustard gas. Unlike other gases, mustard gas would remain active even in different weather conditions. So, days and even weeks later, troops would fall victim to its harmful effects as they trudged through mud or water that was exposed to the gas before. Subsequently, gas masks would have to be worn longer on both the soldiers and their horses, and more cautions were to be taken. Yet after the first shocking attacks of the gas, the victimized country was able to predict the enemy's tactics. Therefore, poison gas was not a huge advancement for one country specifically. An important naval weapon was the torpedo, a self-propelled weapon carrying an explosive charge launched by a submarine, light craft, and larger warships, as well as aircraft, in order to sink the enemy vessel. Countries such as Great Britain launched theirs off submarines and surface ships. Once TNT became short in supply, the countries changed to an explosive made of either amytal or a mix of hexanitride and TNT. As the diameter of the torpedo increased, so did the charge weight. Torpedoes went from a 250 charge weight with a 2,000-yard range in 1914 to a 500-pound charge weight with an 18,000-yard range in 1917. Submarines were mostly used by the Central Powers, often called the U-boat. These vessels were relatively small at 100 to 750 tons. By the end of the war, though, they reached about 2,000 tons. They either ran by gasoline engine or a steam engine and held torpedoes for sea attacks. The time they could be submerged was limited, so the Navy had to plan accordingly. Austria-Hungary entered the war with 7 submarines, but throughout the war acquired 20 more. Germany started with 35, but received hundreds more during the war. The Allied country of Great Britain, though, started the war with the most of 73. The crew aboard the submarine communicated through radios to its country. The warship utilized by the Allies was the destroyer, a small, lightly protected and armed warship capable of high speed. The development of this ship was somewhat new at the beginning of the war, as it stemmed from the development of the torpedo. By 1914, destroyers, partly because of lower construction costs in comparison to larger warships, were the most numerous of the world's naval combatants. Faster than a battleship, this small ship became an excellent submarine hunter due to the development of sonar and depth charges. Depth charges further advanced with the invention of hydrophones in 1917, which did a better job of detecting submerged submarines. From the ground to the sky to the sea, these new weapons developed during World War I will never be forgotten due to the lasting impact they made on this world.